East of the Sun, West of the Moon, a Norwegian tale. Once upon a time, there were a poor woodcutter and his wife living in the forest, who had so many children that they could scarcely feed and clothe them. They were all fine children, but the bravest and most cheerful was the eldest daughter. One evening late in the year, when the cold wind blew hard against their little cottage, they heard a loud knock at the door. The father got up from the hearth and went outside to see who it was. A large white bear stood outside the door, waiting for him. "Good evening to you," said the white bear. "Good evening," said the woodcutter politely. "I've taken a fancy to your eldest daughter," said the white bear. "If she will come away to live with me, I can promise your family prosperity and good fortune." "No, indeed," said the woodcutter. "I'd rather stay as poor as we are than let my daughter go off to live with a white bear." The bear looked at him sadly. "Perhaps you will change your mind. I'll return next week." But the woodcutter shook his head and closed the door. The eldest daughter, who had been standing near the open door, had heard the bear's words. She thought that the white bear had a kind, gentle manner. He did not seem at all fierce. The lass thought about the bear's request for several days. She made up her mind that when the bear came back, she would go off with him, and neither her father nor her mother could talk her out of it. When the bear returned in exactly 1 week, the lass answered his knock and said she was ready to go with him. She said farewell to her family, climbed onto his shaggy back, and off they went. "Are you afraid?" asked the white bear. "No, not at all," said the lass. "There is nothing to fear," said the white bear. "Hold tight to my fur and you won't fall off." They traveled this way for a long time, until at last they came to a steep cliff. The white bear knocked on the rocky face of the cliff, and a door opened for him. Inside was a fine castle of many rooms, all brightly lit and richly furnished. The bear led the way to a room where a table was laid and supper waiting. Then he gave the lass a small silver bell. Whenever she wanted anything, said the bear, she was to ring the bell, and it would be brought to her. The lass thanked him, and the bear left. The lass was very hungry, so she ate the supper. Then, very sleepy from her long journey, she found a bedchamber and went to sleep. She lived cheerfully in the castle under the hill for some months. Her only companion all this time was the white bear, and as time went on, she became quite fond of him. And although he talked with her quite gaily, he would answer no questions about either the castle or himself. Only one thing troubled her. At night, just as she was falling asleep, she would hear someone come into the room and lie down. In the morning, when she awoke, there was no one to be seen. She puzzled over this for some time, wondering if it was the white bear who came into the room, or perhaps a strange underground creature of some kind. She grew silent, thinking about it. The white bear, noticing her silence, said, "Lass, this castle and all that is in it are yours. I wish you to be happy here. The silver bell will bring you anything you want. Ask me no questions, trust me, and nothing shall harm you." "I do trust you," said the lass. "Are you tired of my company?" asked the white bear sadly. "Do you wish me to go away?" "No," said the lass warmly. "I have become very fond of you." But she became more and more curious about the creature who came into her room at night. Since she could ask no questions, she resolved to find out for herself. The next night, she stayed awake until she heard the creature come into the room and fall deeply asleep. Then she got up and lit a candle. When she brought the candle over to gaze down at the sleeping figure, she could scarcely believe her eyes. It was a young man with fair hair and a pleasant, open face. As she gazed in surprise, 3 drops of hot tallow fell from the candle onto his white shirt, and the young man woke up. He stared at her in sorrow. "Oh, lass, what you have done will bring grief to us both. A wicked troll has bewitched me so that I am a white bear by day and a man by night. There is only one way for me to break the enchantment. If you had willingly stayed with me a full year without knowing my true form, I would be freed. Now that you have seen me, I am still in their power." "Surely there is something I can do to save you," cried the lass. He shook his head. "I must leave you now to return to the land of the trolls." "Can I come with you?" she asked. "I am not afraid." But again he shook his head. "Tell me the way, then, and I will search for you until I find you." He looked at her with gratitude and love. I'm afraid you will never find that place. Few mortals can. It lies east of the sun and west of the moon, and there is no road that leads to it." Before he could say anything more, both the man and the castle disappeared. The lass found herself sitting in the middle of a forest, dressed in the ragged clothes she had worn when she first met the white bear. "I failed to help the white bear break the enchantment," she thought, "but if I seek him out in the land of the trolls, I may be able to help him escape their power." So she started off and walked many weary days, asking everyone she met, "Can you tell me the way to the place that lies east of the sun and west of the moon?" But no one had ever heard of the place, until one day she met an old woman who said kindly, "I have heard that a prince is held prisoner in a castle that lies east of the sun and west of the moon. How to get there, I do not know. Ask the east wind." The lass walked and walked until she found the home of the east wind. There she asked if the east wind knew the way to the castle east of the sun and west of the moon. "I have heard of it," said the east wind, "but I don't know the way. I have never blown so far. Perhaps the west wind knows. I will carry you there, lass." With a gentle swoop, she was lifted up into the air and carried along over the earth to the home of the west wind. "This lass seeks the prince in the castle east of the sun and west of the moon," said the east wind. "Do you know where it is?" "No," said the west wind. "I have never blown that far. I will take her to the south wind, who has traveled over more lands than we have." With a brisk flurry, the west wind took her up into the clouds and carried her along swiftly. "Are you afraid?" called the west wind. "Not at all," said the lass. When at last they reached the home of the south wind, the west wind told of the lass's request. "I have blown over many lands," said the south wind, "but I've not seen such a place. I'll take the lass to the north wind. The north wind is the oldest and strongest of us. If the north wind does not know where it is, it cannot be found." The south wind lifted her high above the earth and carried her along on a strong, steady breeze until they reached the cold home of the north wind. "What do you want?" roared the north wind. "You needn't be so cross," said the south wind. "I have a brave lass here who seeks the prince in the castle east of the sun, west of the moon. Have you ever been there?" "I know where it is," said the north wind. "It's a great distance. I blew an aspen leaf there once, and I was so tired I had to rest before I could return." "Can you tell me the way?" asked the lass. "I will go myself." "No need for that," growled the north wind. "If you are not afraid to come with me, I'll carry you there." "I'm not afraid," said the lass. "I will go with you, thank you, for I must get there as fast as I can." The north wind blew hard, and with a roar they shot up into the air high above the land and the seas. They raced along, the north wind blowing with all its power. Down below, a storm raged. Trees were uprooted, and on the sea, ships tossed madly. They tore on and on over the sea until even the powerful north wind became weaker and weaker. They dropped down lower and lower over the crests of the waves. The icy spray splashed her legs. "Are you afraid?" puffed the north wind. "No, I am not afraid," she replied. But she was glad to see the outline of land ahead. With a final burst of strength, the north wind dropped her on the shore close to the castle that lay east of the sun and west of the moon. "I must rest a day on the shore," puffed the north wind faintly. "This is no place for a lass. Are you sure you want to stay?" The lass said she must free the prince if she could, so she thanked the north wind and went on her way. Since it was still daylight, there was not a troll to be seen. She walked to the castle and sat down near the gates to think of how she could free the prince. As soon as the sun went down, out came the trolls, hairy, red-eyed creatures scurrying about, chattering and shrieking to one another in excitement. The sight of them was enough to scare the bravest mortal. But the lass had come this far in her request, and she would not hesitate now. Gathering her courage, she walked boldly up to one of the troll women. "Can you tell me what is going on?" she asked politely. "Is there some work I could do for a night's lodging and a bit of food?" "Tonight is the night the prince must choose a bride from among us," cried the troll woman exultantly. "When the moon stands high over the treetops, we meet in that clearing by the old oak, and the one who can wash the 3 spots of tallow from his shirt can claim the prince." The troll woman shrieked with glee as she hurried off after the others. Trolls were coming to the clearing from all directions, so the lass followed them. In the clearing was a large pot of water, and in front of it sat rows of chattering trolls. When the moon stood high above the treetops, the prince came with his shirt. He looked about at the throng of trolls and grew pale. But when he saw the lass standing alone at the rear of the crowd, he smiled in relief. "Now we'll begin," said a troll woman who seemed to be their leader, and she began very confidently to wash the shirt. But the more she rubbed and scrubbed, the bigger the spots grew. "Ha!" cried another troll woman. "It's clear you cannot wash the shirt clean. You can never claim the prince. Let me try." She seized the shirt and went to work, but she did no better. Her scrubbing and rubbing only made the spots bigger and darker. All the trolls clamored to wash the shirt. They took turns, grabbing it from one another, each troll scrubbing away with her claws as hard as she could. The shirt only looked darker and dirtier than ever. The 3 tallow spots did not come out. By now, the night was ending. "You have all tried, and none of you can wash the tallow spots off," cried the prince. "I see a beggar lass standing there. I'm sure she knows how to wash the shirt. Come here, lass," he called. The lass went to him quickly. "Can you wash the shirt clean?" he asked. "I don't know," she said. "I can try." She took the shirt to the large cauldron of water and dipped the shirt down into it. At once, the shirt became clean and white. When she took the shirt out of the water, the tallow spots were gone. "Yes," said the prince, smiling. "That proves you are the lass for me." The pack of trolls shrieked in disappointed rage. They scrambled to their feet to attack, but the prince clasped hands with the lass and ran for the shore. At that moment, the sun came up. The trolls, trapped by daylight, turned to stone, where they stand to this day. As for the prince and the lass, the north wind, with a strong gust, lifted them high above the sea and carried them back to their own country. I hope you enjoyed that story. It's honestly one of my favorites. And it's pretty wild. There's just a lot of tasks that she must do in order to get her love. This particular version is from Ethyl Johnston Phelps's book, The Maid of the North, Feminist Folktales from Around the World. And honestly, she seems to have taken out some of the details. For example, along the way when the lass is searching for the palace, east of the sun, west of the moon, she ends up going to 3 different old women, all of them in the middle of the woods. They're all very reminiscent of witches. I think a couple of them are like stirring cauldrons. And they're the ones that tell her to go talk to the wind. They also give her, in the original version that I've read, they usually give her some sort of token, like a golden apple, a golden comb, just some gold. And I guess the reason for that is because trolls love shiny things, quite like crows. I do like this kind of abridged version, though. It kind of condenses it down and it makes it a little bit easier to listen to and a little bit easier to understand. If you're a fan of Greek mythology, as I am, as many of you know, this story is very reminiscent of Eros and Psyche. In that particular story, Psyche is a beautiful woman who has been married off to who she thinks is a monster, and the longer she stays with him, the more she starts to think maybe he's not a monster because she's loving their nights that they spend together. Unlike in this particular version of the story, he is sneaking into her room and they aren't getting it on every night, which is pretty weird and problematic, but in the context of the mythology, it's kind of romantic. And she has to go around after she betrays him by seeing his face, which was a trick by her sisters because, of course, this myth has to pit women against each other. She has to go on different tasks set to her by Eros' mother, Aphrodite. And it's very, very entertaining. However, I am not a fan of Eros. I think he is honestly the big bad of Greek mythology, and I don't believe that he should have a romantic love story, but that's just me. And I think that might be another reason why I really enjoy East of the Sun, West of the Moon, because it's the same story, same structure, pretty much the same everything, but I don't have to think about Eros getting laid, because I don't think he deserves it. Alright, and that is a long explanation for why I like this story so much. Another version of this story, which is much more modern, is, I believe, the series A Court of Thorns and Roses. It's just very reminiscent of a young woman who doesn't know the true identity of the man that she is forced to live with now, who falls in love and then has to complete a series of tasks in order to kind of prove her love. Thankfully, that series kind of circumvents that trope, turns it on its head, but we are still there in the middle of somebody proving their love by accomplishing a series of tasks. Okay, so I am going to head out. I hope you enjoy this carving. Of course, it's only the faces, and I have yet to reveal who these two lovers are. If you have any guesses, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and I will put some hints and clues about these two lovers I am carving very soon. Alright, y'all have a great day. Bye!